Andy, how are you, brother?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
Good, good, good. Thanks for joining me today. By the way, of Beaufort, South Carolina, is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, moved down here about almost 3 years ago. It's
Okay,
great. It's
okay.
great.
I know when we reconnected, what was it, 2 weeks ago, I guess, and it'd been a few years since I spoke to you, and so I did a little Andy Billman Google search. I said, "Oh, he's down in South Carolina now. Good for him." So you and your wife moved down 3 years ago. Is that right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, we did. We did. We have four children, and our oldest are there in South Carolina, a couple hours away from us. So there's another benefit that my daughter now has three kids as of 2 weeks ago, and so we want to be close to the grandkids and them, and plus, who doesn't feel better in good weather, right? So it's
And
usually pretty warm down here, and I enjoy that.
yeah, no kidding. Well, good for you, man. So how many grandkids does that make now?
So three with a fourth coming, I guess, later this year. So
Gotcha.
yeah, it's
You're,
awesome.
yeah, I was gonna
There's
say you're.
nothing better than that.
You look like my parents when you talk about him. You're lighting up like a Christmas tree. So that's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's just what everybody says. The just uh, what a blessing until you actually have grandkids. It's just it's unbelievable. It's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. What's that saying? I think Dave Ramsey says it. If I known how much fun grandkids were going to be, I would have been nicer to their parents.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. It's so true.
Well, thanks for joining me, Andy. The bio kind of talks about what we're going to get into here today, but I've known you for a few years, which goes back to a business meeting that we had. Gosh, I think we said 7 or 8 years ago that we stayed in touch a little bit throughout after that, but then it's been a few years, and we're going to talk. I think everything career today to your book, which we'll unpack here in a little bit that you wrote a few years ago, and in cancer. So, I guess to start off, you're originally a Columbus guy, right? Is it Westerville or Gahanna? I know you went to Gahanna High School, but I thought I read maybe a little bit about a spell in Westerville there too.
Yeah, my mom and dad originally from Westerville, and yes, so Columbus is home, and the reason the Gehenna, my father was a high school football coach, and that took us over to Gehenna, and he was very successful there, and yeah, so that's we've been all over with work and what have you, but Columbus is home.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. And you talk about, I guess we'll kind of go into the book is maybe going to navigate some of this conversation. I was just sharing with you before the call. I spoke to you a couple weeks ago, and I think I just picked it up and kind of started thumbing through it. And it's one of those that, and I don't say this because you're on the call, and I told you this, had I not known you, I would have reached out and thanked you. It's just full of determination and inspiration. But when I saw "Setbacks to Comebacks" is the name of the book, and when I read the title, I said, "Oh gosh, this is so cool." Andy's telling his story, that involves cancer and everything that goes along with his story, and it's that and more. And I thought it was so cool, and I felt seen in some parts when you say the classic. I think you wrote it the Andy Billman way, right? It's like every time you'd have a setback, and I think we can read this book and all relate to it of like, oh, it's not just me, and I think the one of the things that spoke to me about reading this is when I first met you. You came into my office. This was when I was running my last company, and I just saw this powerful business guy, right? That had it all figured out and played Division I football and grew up in Central Ohio and had this amazing story, and then turned private equity and buying small businesses, and it was a little intimidating yet just inspiring when I met you. And then I read this book and I'm like, oh, he is human. And it was just reading some of the setbacks as it's called from that you had in high school up and through college and your career, and so kind of going back to you mentioned your parents, and in the book I guess we'll kind of start start there is your dad was a pretty big figure in your life for well, and your mom, because you mentioned both how, they always reference, the Billmans don't quit. And, talk about what was that mindset like, coming out of high school. It sounds like most kids where we form an identity, be it around sports or a musical instrument or trying to get our grades and our GPA up to get to the next level and get to college. But it sounds like your identity back then was football and which um, transcended into Division 1 at Miami. So kind of talk what kind of influence were your parents of preparing you for some of those setbacks.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. It's hard to articulate, but my mom and dad, and for our entire family, just it's all about them. When we started, when we were youngsters, and they just the expectation with mom and dad was, we're gonna be our best as a family, and that translated, all the way, when you're a young child, that means there's expectations at home. And my mom and dad were, they were always working. I told you about my dad being a high school football coach. So we just, grew up with a family that had high expectations, and it wasn't all about sports. We all three of us, were involved in sports in one way or the other, and it wasn't all about like an expectation that you had to be this or you had to be that. you know my parents just felt that being part of something, of a team sports, is a great thing to do. And if you don't do that, then you can't just wander around at home. So there was always just things you had to do, expectations at home. And then if you were going to play sports, you were going to do your very best. One of my best stories was actually came from my mom. And I don't know, I must have been like in eighth grade or something. And I really liked this one girl, and she was really good at track and running and all that kind of stuff. And if you look at me, I'm 6'4", and I won't tell you how much I weigh today, but I've always been a big guy, and I just really liked this girl. And after the very first day of running through she was one of those runners that could go and go and go, and I ended up like last place. I was so embarrassed. I came home, and as much as I liked her, I came home and I told my mom and dad, like, can you believe this? Like, I'm not a runner, and I like her, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna just quit and not go. And my mom said, Andrew, like, our family doesn't quit anything. When you sign up, you make a commitment, you have to. And so I had to go through, however long that is, and humbly, and I was always in last place. And by the way, I never did get the girl, but probably had something to do with that. But that's just, kind of how my parents, when you make a commitment, right, wrong, or indifferent, you're gonna follow up, and you're gonna finish things. And that was that was a great story, and it carried all the way through. And I'll just never forget that. And my dad was the same. It just there was expectations, and whether it was sports or what have you, you just don't finish. And that carried me through all the way playing, college level. And had a couple, you can, read about it in the book, had a couple of years that were just terrible. One, you didn't win a game. And, I eventually became a captain, and, we turned things around. But very, most people, when things are really hard, and you would just maybe give up and quit. And I guess growing up in that family, we just kept going. You just and life is hard, right? Whether it's work or what have you. I think too often people just kind of check out and say, "Hey, that was hard, so I'm going to go do something." And I'm just so thankful for my parents, kind of teaching us the right way, that you make a commitment, and when things are hard, you just keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's a beautiful lesson that early, especially because I didn't know that story, but it translates, as you said, into really the rest of your life, right? As you went through setbacks, and you just mentioned, and I remember you coming into my office that first time and talking about those first couple of years. I believe the first year you redshirted, and then came into, was it 2 years in a row where you won one game maybe,
Yeah.
and that's and then what I love about that is you didn't quit. And this is when I say this is what you signed up for. You had other offers, right? I believe it was Northwestern, and there was a couple other, D1 schools, and maybe it was harder to transfer back then, but you stuck with what you signed up for. And gosh, it seemed like every time you turned around, there was an injury or a setback with, a new coach or something. But kind of take me through, how did that prepare you, maybe as went through? I mean, college is hard enough the way it is, right? Like here's, an 18, 19-year-old kid, and congratulations, you signed up for this for the next 4 years. You have to figure out what you're going to do the rest of your life. So, you kind of throw that into the curveballs that you kind of kept getting thrown with sports, and it was just a lot of behind the scenes. I don't think a lot of people realize, the athletes go through, and that you certainly did. How did that prepare you then for, which we can, unpack here in a minute, but the career part of your life?
Yeah, it definitely prepared me, and again from a very very young age, and then you go through and you play college football, and then the next step is you hopefully you graduate from college and figure out what you're going to do. And I at that time when I came out, it was early 1991, I guess. The market was really soft. I honestly had a great time at Miami University, great place, and I honestly didn't really know what I was going to do, and a lot of people can relate to that. And I knew I wanted to be in Columbus, Ohio. My wife and I were going to get married in another year. And another story was, my dad at that time had gotten out of college or high school football, and was a very successful business leader in Columbus. And I'll just never forget him, after I had gotten out of Miami, and didn't was trying to figure things out, and he just grabbed me one day and said, Andy, the people aren't waiting on you. You've got to go get out, find an opportunity, and get to work, basically. And it was kind of um, it was a situation where I had to get up and go find a job, and thankfully found a great place, Worthington Industries, and had a soft connection there. And they weren't hiring at that time, and I just kind of begged for it because I knew that I needed a job, and I needed to get out there and get working. And thankfully, I had an opportunity, and I didn't even really know what it was all about or how much they were going to pay me or whatever. I just knew that I had a job, and I think again, things have changed, and some things are a lot better, but I think too often a lot of people just give up, or they're trying to find the very best opportunity for them, and as they should. But sometimes you just have to get to work, and you have to find something. And I was grateful and had a wonderful opportunity for 10 solid years. And after that, the company really wasn't growing a whole lot at that time. My wife and I, had 4 children, and we were up in Michigan, and I was just hungry for another opportunity and took another job at that time. And it was an absolute train wreck for me. It was a total loss. Not only did the job not work out after 6 years, but I ended up having to pay back and write a check for the investment I had made, and it just didn't work out. But that is a huge setback. That was another setback for me after the physical stuff of playing football and not always winning, and then changing a job, and it didn't work out. But I just remember from my mom and dad is just you can't give up. That's life is about learning and growing and moving. And so I just continued to push forward, and actually came back to Worthington Industry and spent another 10 years and had a lot of fun, had learned a lot. And, that turned it into a growth opportunity, became the president of a very large business and doubled the business, and was traveling all around the world, 21 plants. And, things didn't work out at the end of the day, and I had to move on. And that was another setback for me. It was a very difficult time. And again, a lot of people have been through that, where you've had a job, you've done well, you've made some money, you've taken care of your family, and it doesn't always work out, and you need to change and do something different. And so that again was just another situation where I had to figure out. And I think I met you at that time, where I said, I'm going to try to help a small company. And that was all really kind of new for me, and thankful for that opportunity.
Yeah, yeah, that is when about kind of where it picks up where we met. So I laugh because I think about in the book when you said, and you're referencing your dad of, I think it was the first day where, you're out of college. It was that first, sleep in, right? Like I don't have it's the summertime. I don't have a job lined up. And he comes in your room and says, "What are you doing?"
Yeah,
And your thought, I think, in the book was, "Well, I'm going to go drink a few beers and go hang out with my girlfriend later and enjoy my
yeah,
summer." And he's like, "No, dude, that's not
yeah.
what we're doing here." And so I was impressed though, is I believe, yeah, you said the market was soft, and just the tenacity. I don't even think they were hiring, and you just, the persistence to go after what you knew at the time. I mean, it's kind of cool. I don't think the dream was, "Hey, I'm going to lead this $1 billion company someday," but you started off by knocking on the door and sending emails and phone calls, and almost saying, it's kind of cool to look back and almost saying to them, "I'm your guy. Maybe not today, but I'm going to be your guy someday," right? Like there was that dream of, like, you just almost like this intuition that you knew. But take me back through how that part started with. I believe you started off in the factory on the floor, correct? Before
I
moving up to
did, and
sales and.
it really started with a lot of no's, several no's, and almost very, from almost an annoying standpoint, to the at that time, very high level vice president of HR and what have you. And it was a it was a great uh, memory for me, and for anybody to think about. Is I think a lot of times I tell my kids this all the time, like, sometimes what one no doesn't mean it's no. Now, it's at some point in time, mom and dad would say, no, we're going to do something different. But in this construct, in that particular situation, I was very persistent is the word. And I needed a job. I wanted a job. It was a great company. And I knew, I had confidence in myself that if there was an opportunity, I would do well and I would show up. And that's where it ended up. And yeah, they ended up, and what a great thing. I didn't even know that, by the way, that they, you start out in the plant, but what a beautiful model of, people that are actually making the money for the company. Start there first. And, had a business degree, but that didn't matter. Is get out in the plant, work for 6 months or more, get in there at 6 a.m. in the morning with everybody. And then when they're done, then go back in the sales office and learn a little bit more. And that was a great model, at Worthington Industries. And in part and parcel, some people continue to do that. Is if you're ever going to be really proficient at something, sometimes you have to understand how things are actually put together. So,
Mm,
um, great opportunity. A lot of people from that would come in through that situation and work out in the plant. It didn't work out for them, or the guys in the plant said, this guy or girl it aren't a fit because they don't want to work hard, and all that. I remember going through that, and within probably 2 or 3 weeks, I got hit on the nose from a slitting line, and started blood's coming off my face. And I remember like, I was okay, by the way. It wasn't like one of those things where you have to go to the hospital, but, just kind of get, um, put back together. And, I had a choice of probably gone into the office and felt bad for myself. And by the way, it was my fault. I did something wrong and I learned, and it wasn't something that was going to kill me, but I went back to work immediately, within minutes, like to get back in. I wanted the guys and gals that were actually out there running the line, taking care of customers, that I wasn't going to quit and I wasn't going to stop because I had blood coming off my face. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
and and I guess that's just something that my mom and dad taught us. And back to the story with my dad, grabbing me a hold and saying, hey, you need to get, it sounds like that was mean. My dad it was not and is not a mean man at all. He just, he expected more from me and knew I could do. And he just gave me a nudge in a positive way. Say, you got to start today.
sure. A
Yeah,
little tough love, and it sounds
sure.
like, and I know I can see this now. I have teenage kids. It's you see the potential, right? And then your dad saw that in you. It's like you see the potential in them, and it's that fine line maybe of letting letting them learn by their own mistakes, but also I guess showing them their strengths too, right? It's like your dad saw that potential in you, and but yeah, at the same time, and we can get into a little bit later, but well, actually, this was probably good timing because it talked you talked about in the book your I believe it was your senior year, and it was a coaching change, and
Yes.
that was a decision moment, right? And that was, I guess, a point. It would have been, I guess, not long before this part where you're out of college and he's saying you got to go find something to do, you got to go eat, but you were shocked that he said, I'll leave it up to you. If coaching changed, the program was getting turned upside down. So that was probably one of those moments where your dad's looking at you and saying, okay, I've raised him to make these decisions on his own. He's a senior in college. He's becoming a man. So I thought that was really cool that he almost had that silent leadership to just look at you and say, Andy, what do you want to do?
Yeah, it was. It was a time where I almost expected my dad to say that I had to go play a fifth, situation, because I, had that opportunity to play again, and he left it up to me, and it was kind of like, it's your time. And after playing, 4 years and having some tough stuff, I decided to say yes and continue to jump in. With Had a lot of respect for the new coach coming in, and we turned things around. And what a beautiful story of how things can turn around in a positive way. You just have to give it enough time and focus, and not give up too quick.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Beautiful. So you get the job with Worthington, and
yeah.
you know, and back then it wasn't the I guess the beast that it is today, even though it was still a publicly traded company back then, correct?
It was. It
Okay,
was. Mm.
and so the McConnell family, and so you're going through the ranks, and you get into sales roles, into leadership roles, and describe what made you want to jump ship. Then you went to work for actually one of their customers, is that correct? To lead their program, lead their company.
That's correct. And I did. It was another market situation whereby the business was a little soft, and I was hungry. I was ready. I wanted to go out, and it was all about me. It wasn't about the company saying, "Hey, you need to go out." And there had been a couple opportunities to go into different markets, and they had picked someone else. And I wasn't as mature as I am today. So, for me, I was kind of like, well, this is my chance to go out and do it on my own. And it was an opportunity. I definitely learned a lot, got into different roles, and challenged myself to do different things. It ultimately did not work out for me, but I took a risk, and I think too often, a lot of people are afraid to take that risk, and do something different and learn a different skill or what have you. And I get it. A lot of people, they don't want to put their personal risk or their family risk. And I was just hungry. I've always been that way. And I just want to continue to go and push myself and what have you. And this was a situation. And you know, in retrospect, I could have just stayed there, and I probably would have continued to grow. But would I have, learned as much as I did in that private company situation? Probably not. So to each his own. That's everybody's personal decision on what to do. And many people would look at that in a backward situation and go, "Well, you made a really bad decision." And I like to invert things. I would say, well, it didn't work out, but I sure learned more than I did otherwise. And now I'm more prepared to get into, a different role and actually continue to grow more quickly. And that's what happened when I came back the second time, which is kind of a interesting thing. Not a lot of companies would do that, and such a great company to give me an opportunity to come in and grow fast and do some things that were very challenging, but at the same time uh, fit what I wanted to do. That I was always trying to learn and grow and do more. And it really wasn't about always making more money. It was about pushing myself to do more and help the company, continue to grow. So I think we can all, learn from those situations.
Absolutely. And I did not know that part of your story until I read the book, and I think our minds thinks alike because I see it as you saw it, and I see when I was reading that part, I was like, "Oh my gosh," it was inspiring to me. The fact that you were sort of at the top of the mountain already, and you were still climbing, with that organization, and you were willing to take that risk, to say, what could this look like? And for you to say it's not about the money, like I 100% believe that about you, because you are more of a visionary and a dreamer of pushing yourself and those around you and trying to better an organization. And so yeah, reading that, I was just, leaving it all out there. That was, and so I love the fact that, some people could say, well, that was a dumb decision, or what a mistake, or and 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 that's one thing that I've really, unpacked a lot in this past season as well, is there's really two sides to look at it, right? How you shape the identity. And it's, well, Andy, that was an interesting career move, right? Versus, Andy, look at all the knowledge, look at the growth that you got through that. Look at you had to go through those painful moments, those setbacks, as the book says, to experience. I mean, would you have uh, taken the reins of Worthington? You grew it from $500 million to $1 billion in sales. Could you have done that without the setbacks that you had at the previous company, and all those personal, struggles that you went through? Maybe, but maybe not, right? So I see it as you do, is let's choose the identity of the story here, and the identity is always has to be hope, right? And in that dream of, well, this happened for a reason, and I might figure it out now. It might take me, a year to figure out why this happened, and maybe I'll
Mm,
never know.
right.
I think one of my, I don't know if you ever read Rick Rubin's new book, The Creative Act, but the very last page, and sometimes I'll go through my house and I'll pick up the book and look at the last page, and he says the universe never gives us an explanation why.
Mm,
And
yeah,
and I
how
think
true.
that, yeah, and I think it's so true, and it detaches us from the result. It detaches us from the why of things happening. And so yeah, I'm with you. I think, it's how we choose to look at, that experience. And to me, looking at your story, is I think it served you at the next level of, of going back to Worthington to, to take that team and take that company to the next level. So thank you for sharing that part of it. And, and I wrote down here my notes, silver linings, because it feels like all of your setbacks, you choose to look at as, where's the silver lining in it, you know? And that's so cool and inspiration for not only just, you know, a business setting, but just life setting, you know, in general. So moving on, so you go back to Worthington, and within what, a couple of years, you're promoted now to uh, the sub company there, Worthington Cylinders, to the
Hmm.
president role. Is that correct?
Yes. Hmm.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's I think the part of your story I knew, but you know, when you came in my office that day, you had left, but that was kind of like the rock and roll show, right? Flying around and growing the company, and you know, you were there for 10 years, and you know, what was that like growing the company, and then I guess kind of take me through one day hearing, oh, we're not doing this anymore.
Hmm. Well, it was a great ride for sure. It was holy cow. I mean, I learned so much. I really didn't
Yeah.
have well any experience to grow a global business and with assets all over, and so just a wonderful opportunity for me to learn and grow, and um, just very just a great situation whereby the team that was installed there that I went in, the president was a great leader, and he just retired. It was his time to retire and enjoy life, and it was a catalyst for me to jump in there, and had an awesome team around me. It was all about them. They helped me get through that, and spent 4.5 years there. And we were like a rocket ship. I mean, through a lot of acquisitions and some very tough situations, as well as closing plants and moving things around and hiring people. And it was just awesome. Really good situation. And my time was over after 4.5 years, and I felt like I served well. At the same time, I also certainly made mistakes along the way. We all do, and if you aren't willing to put your neck out there and do some difficult things, you probably shouldn't be in that role. And I had always known that it was risky, that if things didn't work out for some reason, that the company might replace me and put someone else in, and that's kind of where ultimately it ended up. But I mean, I just learned so much through that process, and so thankful to be around the team behind us, and giving them an opportunity to grow as well. I always get excited when I get to see opportunities for other people, and I can go along for the ride, so to speak, and be involved in that process and see people go from a role to a bigger role, and maybe they wouldn't have done that. And I like to encourage people to just push forward. That's the way I'm kind of engineered. Always, I think it's really important to have a positive mental attitude no matter what you're doing, and that was fun. I actually that's probably the biggest opportunity for me when I see other people can grow. It just is fun, and we had a lot of opportunities with all that growth where you got to see people just continue to, and there's still many of them are still today, and now they're presidents of this and presidents of that, and
Yeah, that's
I had
cool.
an opportunity to work with them through that process.
Well, that's cool. It's almost like watching your second family grow up and become, you know.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's
Yeah.
really really beautiful to watch. And so so that chapter comes to an end at Worthington. Did you feel? I know we've talked about identity in a couple different fashions here. Did you feel part of your? And actually, I think, yeah, you did talk about this in the book, where you learned about identity in the aspect of tying it to career versus, I mean, you're it's hard for me to fathom, because the Andy I know is you know, you light up when you talk about your family and your wife and your kids and grandkids, and but was that setback, did you feel like a large part of you was let go, like, what do I do now? I'm Gosh, you weren't even 50 years old yet, were you?
I was not, and yes, that to be honest, it just put me shut me completely down. I mean, that was in all the things I've been through, the physical and the other. That was that was probably one of the hardest things that I've been through. And anytime you're in a situation like that and things change so immediately, and at that time, I honestly did not know what I was going to do to continue to change and take care of my family. And there was a dark period, I guess, in my life where I was, kind of asking myself, like, what am I worth, and why did that happen? And that's all natural. I think we've all been through
Sure.
situations where you're in a massive setback, and you're in a place that's not in a good place. But I eventually, and I think, my wife, actually, she's the one, just kind of like, she was working at that time, and she said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. But it was one of those things, like, again, like my mom and dad, like, get to work. You can't sit around the house and feel sorry for yourself. And I will admit, I did for a period of time, because I didn't know what the heck I was going to do. But
Sure.
eventually, I just pushed myself up out of there and had a different opportunity. And I really enjoyed the opportunity with the private family situation, and it stimulated my brain and my thinking, and I was learning to do different things that I had never done when I was at a large company like Worthington. And it was a great opportunity. And like you said, it helped me divorce from the actual job. And we should all do that,
Mm,
because they're important, the jobs are important, the company is important. And then when it's not, you have to, it's not something that should take you down. It gives you an opportunity to say, okay, what did I learn, and how can I grow?
mhm.
Yeah.
I never even put those 2 together till just now of the correlation of this kid coming out of college and his dad saying, "Get to work," to
Mm,
now, 20 some years later, 25 years later, whatever, and you are telling yourself that of, you know, taking that probably that pause of, kind of the crossroads of life and, got thrown a huge setback of but there's that life lesson, right? And from all those
mhm.
years ago of keep going, get up, get back to work, and that's
You
really
have
cool.
to. There's reflection, and everybody deserves an opportunity just to take a breath.
Yeah,
It's not all about you or what happened to you. It's about, what do you want to do next, and find a path, and go chase it. And I'm just very thankful that I eventually stepped off the floor and said, all right, I'm going to go to work and find something else to do. Yeah.
sure, sure. No, that's inspiring. I think everyone can relate to. What's the saying? I think Oprah says everybody has a story, right? And it's until you
Mm,
unpack
so
what's
true.
behind, what's behind the scenes, right? As nobody talks other than maybe with their family and closest friends and a therapist about what's really going on, right? But it's like you hear of these stories, and I look at you again as someone who's reached the summit a couple of different platforms, and again, and I told you I felt seen, right? Like reading your book of like the setback into let's love the way that you think of okay it's another comeback, right? It's another comeback, and that was really refreshing to read. So moving on to I guess this next phase, this next season of your life, then you go work for or join kind of forces with the private equity family in town that is purchasing businesses, and they're kind of using all of your years of experience and your knowledge of direction of how to lead and how to run companies, and that kind of then shifted over towards what you're doing now with staying in that manufacturing space and purchasing companies around the country. But I guess this is where we'll kind of segue into when your diagnosis, when you first realized something was going wrong. And when I read that part in the book, I was like anxious. I was like, when you talked about the seizure, I was like, no, 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 we got to get this guy to the hospital. And it was like,
Yeah.
you did such a good job of describing that day. And it's like, as the reader knowing, what I know, I'm like, no, 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 we got to go, but you kind of, if you can, take me through what a confusing and weird, scary day that must have been when you couldn't describe what was going on.
Sure, I'll do my best for sure. Just a completely unexpected thing, and traveling on business. And we had purchased. I was still at the family office at that time, and they had made an investment in a company down in Tennessee. And what I say in my book, I think, is I had kind of lost my noodle, so to speak, and couldn't speak physically. And that was kind of the first thing. I didn't really know what was going on. Ended up in a hospital. Recovered from that. Had found out at that point in time really what was going on. And thankful that I got a chance to work with Ohio State University and their team. And they said, hey, you've got brain cancer, and it might be something that we can just remove it and move on, or it might be a malignant situation, maybe worse. We don't know. And actually, when I first found that out, the first situation, which I think I talk about in the book, is I had said, okay, after I thought about that, I was like, okay, that's strange, and how'd that happen? I actually went back to work and flew again down to Tennessee because we had purchased a business, and I felt like, hey, this can wait. It didn't feel as urgent as maybe it was the second time. I definitely was gonna have surgery, but I had some time in between to kind of figure out what I was gonna do. So I went back to the company, and that's when I had really a major situation, and seizure, and ended up on the floor and didn't know what was going on. And here I go, and I'm back in the hospital. And that was kind of the time where it got very serious for me, and got back home. And they ultimately did find out that the brain cancer situation and the malignancy from it. And had a really good surgery. And was thankful to that get through that. um, and from that point in time, it went through some really tough stuff, some radiation and chemotherapy and all that. And I was able to recover from that. And again, I used that as a catalyst from when I was a young kid, and my parents, like, you've got a choice here. Like, we can just stop working, stop moving, and feel bad for yourself. And I certainly had a several moments where, it was very, very difficult for me, the first surgery, but I eventually recovered from that, went back to work. And I knew that the potential of the uh, brain situation, that it was going to come back, but I kind of put it in the back of my mind. And here, like, 6 months ago, it came back, and I had another surgery, and I'm still right in the middle of that right now. And just trying to work through it. Just really difficult situation. Anybody that's been through any kind of cancer like that, it really challenges you on just staying alive and moving, and getting through that. And that's where I am, right now. So again, going back to that was 2018, the first situation. And uh, I keep saying most difficult thing I've ever been through. That was the most difficult thing I've ever been through, to go through a almost 4-hour surgery and get woken up during the surgery, and taking this out of my brain and putting me back together, and then putting me through all these therapies. Gosh, I thought playing college football was tough. I got knocked around a lot, and and a lot of stuff happened, but that was really physically uh, difficult for me. And I come back and say, from when I was a youngster and playing college football, was difficult to do that. And it actually, it helped me. It helped me to get through that. And I think for anybody, I wouldn't wish that on anyone, by the way, but people do have really tough situations. Some of them are physical, some of them are mental, and in and of themselves, they're real, and they impact people differently. But there are opportunities. All those are opportunities to fight through that, be tough, and find your way through those situations. And I was thankful for that. I talk about that in the book. It's such a twisted thing to say, is what a blessing it has been to me to have brain cancer now the second time around, because it has really given me a new view of life. What does life really mean day in and day out? And I think for anybody that has gone through a medical situation like that, or any other situation, uh, is to create the capacity to really make your way through that and switch it around, turn it into a positive thing, and focus on each and every day, which we should all do, right? We should all do. And it's hard, but every day is a true blessing. When the sun is out, or if the sun is not out, the fact that you're alive, you're with your family, around your family, and you're going through some tough stuff. um, these situations I've been through have just given me the capacity to stay alive, but also at the same time to really understand what life is all about.
Wow, that's yeah, the setback of all of them, right? And if I could, I wanted to read. You wrote in the book uh, when the first discovery is, "Am I ready for this fight? Ready or not, I've got to fight with all I've got. If anyone can do it, I know I can. I know who I am. My parents raised me to be courageous, confident, resilient, perseverant, and hopeful. I could be mad or resentful, but that's just not me. I'm going to fight this with a good fight of faith, knowing that God and my family are with me every step of the way."
Mm,
And that just goes to show everything that you had been through leading up to this point. And wow, yeah, it was really inspiring to read that, and not laying on the couch, and if you were, you have those times, right? And asking your family to pick
yes,
up the pieces and fight for you when you just don't have
for sure.
the energy. But just putting this uh, I guess this view on it, right? This identity, as we said before, is so encouraging. And it's so interesting to hear. It's easy for us looking in to say, "Oh, Andy, you have to fight, keep going." But for you to have that attitude is extremely inspiring. So thank you for that.
Yeah, it's last thing I would say about that is, um, we all have those moments with cancer or not, just having a tough day, or what have you. It's just you have to have the capacity to just keep going, just keep moving, get through it, turn it into a positive. Only God knows when it's your last day. And I guess what I'm saying is, until it's over, it's not over. It's only
That's right.
over when it's over. And I can only control what I can control. And that's, wake up every day, do the best I can, have a positive attitude. Some days are tougher than others, and you fight through, and the next day will be better. And I think that's something that will give me the capacity, even through this second situation, to just to continue to go, continue to move through. It's been very difficult for me as I get older, this second situation, but it's changed my mindset. Like, okay, how can I help through this situation? Help others, help myself, help my family, and you know we talk about this. I mean, having grandkids, it just gives you additional energy to have that capacity to spend time with them. We don't know when we all have our additional time or not. So, to me, having every day that I can get on the phone, even, or Zoom call the kiddos and laugh and talk. It just gives me additional encouragement to keep going.
Sure, sure. Before we wrap up here, I have two questions that I like to ask before started asking
Sure.
each guest before we end the conversation. But before I do, I had to read this part from your book as well, and I hope I don't. What's the you talk about? You quote Dean Alfange. I'm not sure if I'm saying the name right. You say, "I love these words from Dean." I'm going to say Alfange, and titled "My Creed."
Okay.
Okay, and I thought it was just so fitting with, kind of the theme of the podcast and just the theme of this discussion with you, of dreaming and kind of mixing that with the identity of how we face a situation. And you write from my creed, I do not choose to be a common man. It is my right to be uncommon if I can. I seek opportunity, not security. I want to take the calculated risk to dream, to build, to fail, to succeed, to think and act for myself, and to face the world boldly and say, "This I have done."
Mm-hmm.
That was just so cool and just so such a good description of your whole take on cancer and everything that's been thrown at you from a personal standpoint, from a career standpoint. And I thought that was just so beautiful. So I want to definitely acknowledge that part of your book before getting into the final two questions here. The first one, Andy, I think about, I guess I'll preface it by saying we'll talk about, I guess you can answer however you want. If you want to put it into a kind of a big uh, conglomerate of career mixed with cancer, but what's one thing you've learned about yourself as you've gone through this experience?
I've learned a lot. Oh, wow. That's a big, big, deep, deep question. Um, the way my analogy is I can't always kind of go back to football because that was just such a big part of my life and my father as well. I think about that. Um, when I think about big questions like that is, life is tough and just give you the capacity just to continue to go and grow and learn. And you think sometimes, especially the physical things are easy when you get your arm hurt or you feel something that actually is physically is very, very difficult. And yeah, and as I went through college football, a lot of really tough stuff happened, and I had the opportunity to get fixed up or like, hey, I'm going to take a minute and let someone else play, and I learned a lot from that, and I had more capacity than I ever really thought. I think we all do, and we think we get hard, we get a tough situation physically or even mentally. It's pretty easy, and they're real, right? To say I can't do anymore. I just can't. It hurts. Um, but there is so much capacity in each of us, and I'm using that right now, and I'm talking to myself about that. Like, okay, you've got brain cancer again the second time. The second time is much harder. The story that you get on the internet is not very positive. It tells you that you probably are only going to be alive for another 12 months or 1 year or 2 years or what have you. And I'm thinking about that, like, okay, that's what other people would say, and that those are real feelings. Is you know, just to, again, keep going. And there's times, by the way, there's times where I'm like, I can't keep going, and it hurts too bad, or what have you. And just don't think with all of us, there's so much additional capacity. A lot of people would analogous would be like being in a vehicle crash or what. I mean, something very, very, very bad. And it's amazing. You've heard these stories of people like how they can come out of a situation like that. They're amazing. You think about people in the military that literally have lost a leg or some other situation, and how they can continue. You don't think they can continue to do, but they do. They keep going. And I think every human being um, should continue to challenge ourselves in those very difficult situations to keep pushing. Some at some point in time, there's a point where you do need to stop and take a breath. And but goodness sake, I mean, look at all these athletes that are at these other levels, and I never got to that level and what have you. But the things that they have to do physically is amazing. Is amazing, and they just continue to go and grow and um, change their body on what they can do. I have not even done that, right? So it makes me think about it like, okay, like yeah, I'm almost 56 and I've got brain cancer, but I should start working out a little bit more. And it hurts and I don't want to, but I should. I should. So if that makes any sense, it just
Yeah.
that you just got to keep going and push yourself as far as you can.
Yeah. No, thank you. Last question. And this is one I ask, and it's more geared towards, purpose and that dream. And I guess you can kind of answer it however you want. If you're thinking back to what advice would you give to a younger version, or current, or you can throw life in there. But the question is, what advice would you give to someone who's hearing the whisper of a dream or a path in life that seems too crazy to chase? It's just and I go back to, before you answer, I go back to when you left Worthington the first time, right? It was like, that was just a crazy dream, a crazy path. And it's how you view what happened there, right? Like how you view the result. So what advice would you give to someone who's hearing that whisper of a dream or that path in life, then just see it's just too crazy of a dream to chase?
Yeah, I would encourage all of us, when you're feeling that and getting nudged to try something, to do something, to learn something. When you get that feeling, and it's not the feeling of jumping off of a cliff, right? But you've got to be thoughtful about that feeling that you have. I would encourage. I mean, look at your situation, right? You're doing podcasts. You didn't do that before, right? And here
No.
you are, and you're trying it and you're learning, and away you go, and you're going to be excellent at it. But had you not decided to do something totally different, and it's hard sometimes, you might fail, but you will learn and you'll pivot from that and do something different. So I would encourage anybody that if you're if your heart is not in what you're currently doing, or if it is in something you're doing but you still are getting nudged to do something different, then I would encourage you to get out there and try it and do it. I will just end with this. I have never written a book or offered a book, and I was nervous about that. Thank God my kids encouraged me. And now, whether or not if the book does anything, but it's a legacy for my family, whereby my kids were involved, that they encouraged me, and I was nervous about that and pushed me out to be totally open with the world about that. And I learned a lot going through that process. And again, it was something that I just felt a nudge to just share that story, help other people in some way. And that was a hard thing to do. I never realized how hard it was, by the way, to offer or author your own book. That was
Yeah.
rather difficult, probably as hard as what you're going through here, right? So yeah, that's my humble, um, you know, situation for people and opportunities to go ahead and try. And
Yeah.
you know what? We all can also test. We don't have to go completely in, but learn and try and give yourself an opportunity, and that can help you kind of move all the way over to something new and different.
No, that's so true. I think of the view of, will the older version of me regret trying and saying, "Well, that
Mm,
wasn't for me," or even failing? Or will the older version of me regret not trying at all, wondering what if, right?
right.
And
Yeah,
that's what I think those are some of the things that keep me awake at night and or during the day that won't leave me alone. So it sounds like we're on
sure.
the same path there. So
Yeah. Keep going.
keep
Yeah.
going.
Keep
Andy's
going.
book is called Setbacks and the Comebacks. I'm gonna the we'll put a link to the Amazon link in the show notes, and
Thank you.
do yourself a favor, whoever's listening, pick up this book. It's so good. There's some inspiring moments in there. There's some funny ones in there, and Andy likes to call them the Andy Billman moments in there. So Andy, I am going to tell you to keep fighting, but you're the last person I need to tell that to. It's clear, it's obvious. Keep going, keep fighting, praying hard for you, man. And thank you so much. I'm so grateful that you joined me on here today.
You got it. Thanks for the opportunity.